So one thing we like to say is that we don't believe that masculine is better than feminine. We think both of them are good. And we believe that humans are not men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that we're all from Earth, and masculine and feminine strengths support us all in doing our job better. And so we just want to help people move into that direction. And then discover for yourself what you're naturally good at or what you've been culturally suppressing is the idea. So we really want to move from the stereotype into the archetype, the idea that, only males do masculine and only females do feminine, and if you're a man and you do feminine, then there's something wrong with you, into the notion that masculine and feminine is this balance that's archetypal that flows across men and women. This is an example of this masculine versus feminine archetype, and it really comes down from this being a polarity of opposites. And if you think back to that, predator-prey change right here, the masculine energy is more differentiating energy. How do I define myself? By how I'm different from you. And we see that a lot in the masculine dynamic, where little boys will say something like, I can climb the tree. Well, I can climb a taller tree. Well, I can climb a building. There's all of this, like, which is the higher point that I can get to be different and better and stronger than you. Whereas in the feminine archetype, it's more about how we're the same. And you often see this when women get together. They'll say, oh, I do that too. You do knitting, I do knitting, and they'll talk about how they're similar. And when we do these workshops, it's super interesting because we'll put men and women in different rooms, have them come back and introduce themselves to each other, and the men will make like spreadsheet of how they're different from this man likes this and this man likes that, and the women will talk about how they're the same. It's just every single time.
So we will stop here for a second and see, any insights or thoughts that you guys have, or?
I think there's lots of dimensions to this. I mean, it's not that we can take the 29 dimensions on the leadership circle and label them FM, all the way around, masculine. Because there's, even within each one, there is a less mature expression of those things and a more mature expression.
Exactly.
So this is not a flat, categorized to columns or to boxes or anything like that, because this gets really complex really fast.
Well,
I think there's a masculine energy in patriarchy that is very adolescent, and maturing that masculine energy is as important, if not more important, than integrating feminine energy. I mean, there's two things.
Well, you're exactly right. The way I would look at it is I think polarity thinking is the way I view it is polarity thinking is the core of really the physical universe. If you go down to the subatomic level, it's positive and negative charge on whether it's the quark level or the electron and the proton level, right? And so our entire existence in this universe is based on a fundamental polarity and balancing polarities. And all the physical laws of gravity and everything, quantum mechanics, electricity, chemistry, all of this comes from a fundamental polarity balance. So if you look at any one of these dynamics, you can do a polarity map on masculine, feminine, what we would call shadow, less mature, and positive, more mature versions of that. So you can almost do a polarity map on each aspect of that. And then in general, there's sort of an aggregate. And this is kind of the aggregate of the archetype, right? And it really comes down to these two, differentiating energy versus integrating energy. Feminine is integrating energy. It's the thing that it's sort of the blend. And masculine is the differentiated. I think the next slide actually shows that.
In this masculine archetype, we're talking about patriarchy. Patriarchy comes from this hierarchical structure. And what you see, for example, in boys' games like football, you have the captain and the co-captain, and it's all about the task and where you're going and winning and competition, and all of that is expressed in that masculine expression. In the feminine, if you think about girls' games, for example, it's more like we're all going to play together. We're going to play Ring Around the Rosies. We're going to go around. There's more equality in it. How do we connect to each other? It's more about relationships, games that create relationships, and people collaborating. And also there's this sense of unconditional respect. Like we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so even if you're disabled, you're part of our tribe. And we'll bring in those marginalized voices. In the masculine, it's more earned respect. So if you kick the ball the furthest, then you win the game, right? Or if you fall down on the field, then we just drag you off and we bring in another player. So those are the masculine rules, and we don't believe that all of this is the new and this is the old. We don't believe that way. We believe that if you want to create a structure, like if I'm going to have a company, I have to be competitive. I have to know where I stand versus my competition. But I don't want to be competitive with my peers in my company. I want to have a collaborative environment where we have relationship. So these archetypes basically go down to these very basic, fundamental parts and wholes. Parts and wholes come together, and that's how the world gets created.
So this quickly reminds me of a little thing. I have this book, and it's written by Steve Case, who founded AOL, and he has a proverb in here that he believes in, and he actually put this in my book, Roger. And the core of the proverb is an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So he wrote that in my book here, and that's what we're talking about in an organization. Is you want to go far, and you can't go far unless you go together. But you have to have a direction. So there's sort of the masculine energy that if it was an all-female organization and there was a female leader, they need to express a masculine directionality and a decision: we're going now versus then. Right? So that's the masculine piece. And then the feminine piece is, hey, everyone here is needed, and everyone has a voice, and not everyone always has a vote. And sometimes you have to go fast.
I just wanted to show you guys one thing really quickly here. This. So we've got preliminary V-factor data from about 200 people. And what's really interesting to see is that overall what we're seeing from our 150 people is that we're a little more masculine than feminine when we look at those 10 attributes scored 1 to 7.
Total aggregate, yeah.
But what's really critical here is you would think, okay, the men are more masculine than feminine. That's no big surprise. But you might think the women would be more feminine than masculine. As it turns out, they're exactly even Steven. So what this is showing, it's 196 people.
Mainly professionals, so the women are professionals. A lot of them are STEM professions, and that's one of the insights that I perceive from this as I look at this from an engineering profession, STEM professional myself, working with a lot of STEM women, is they've had to, more than women in other fields, to become high V factor to compete. They can't compete by becoming higher masculine alone, just by pumping up their masculine, because of your original comment about the B word, right? They have to kind of bring both. But the problem is that they can't really go high on both, because if they get too high with masculine and feminine, they'll be labeled both as a wimp and alternating between those two. Bind. And so this is called the double bind for women at work.
We're really interested to see, when we get this data, we want 1,000 men and 1,000 women. We want different ages to see our younger people higher versatility, our older people higher versatility. Will this pattern continue where we're seeing women that are growing both their masculine and feminine side? And this is what I've seen. When women entered into the masculine workforce, they grew their masculine side. But we didn't see so many men coming the other way, growing their feminine side, right? So ultimately what happens is we end up in a society that has more masculine than feminine. If we don't encourage men to tap into their feminine so that we can have versatility, we can all have versatility, then we will end up with a masculine society.
And this is a shared responsibility we have as men and women, right? You can't blame the men or the women. We have to blame ourselves, all of us earthlings, right? Because one of the challenges that Vijay will tell you, he felt afraid to go bury the bird or to cook, because you're afraid of not just being told that by other men, but by women showing disapproval of you being too feminine, right? Where your evolutionary biology might be attracted to a very masculine man for those very ancient reasons, right? So look in the mirror is what I tell the women that we teach this to. Look in the mirror. If a man in your life has expressed his femininity, are you supporting him? Are you making him feel safe in doing that?